and you're watching NDTV Profit.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this Tuesday afternoon edition of Power Lunch. Let's straight off tell you what's lined up in the show before we get into all the details of the top news and the headlines. Inflation, that remains a top concern and a headline as well. Headline inflation in July has slowed a little bit to 9.22%, but the pressure on for higher interest rates, they remain. The July inflation data, including impact of higher diesel and cooking gas costs, that was announced on 24th. Meanwhile, despite this easing trend, Montek Singh Ahluwalia refused to give a timeline for when we're likely to see inflation dropping to about 4% levels. An exclusive story coming in from Rajkumar Sahu, who joins in just a short while. NTPC's loss has become JSPL's gain at the Patratu thermal plant. The Jharkhand government, we understand, has begun talks with JSPL after talks with NTPC fail. More details coming right up. SK sources deny newspaper reports, say that all is well with the company. The company sources, they indicate to NDTV Profit that Vikram Akula has no intention of resigning or even moving into a non-executive position. And the big corporate voice on the show today, S. Hazara, who's the CMD with Shipping Corporation of India, joins in just a short while on the show to talk more about their Q1 results and the business outlook going ahead. First off, we look at what the markets are doing at this point in time. The Sensex and the Nifty, marginal gains on both the benchmark indices. Below 17,000, that's the Sensex picture. It's off 67 points right now, trading down 0.4%. The Sensex has also been rather choppy and it's got just about nominal gains of 0.3% right now, trading at 5,090. So far today, 5,100 has been difficult to maintain, and we've been consistently trading below that level. The broader markets are actually faring far worse than what the frontline indices are doing. You have the BSE Mid-Cap Index off more than 0.5%, the CNX Mid-Cap Index also off 0.5%, Nifty Junior off just about marginally. The advanced decline picture on the screen will give you a better sense of what is happening in this market. Just about 40% of the stocks on the BSE 500 are advancing at this point, thereby you see that decliners are outnumbering the advancers at this point in time. But we're not focused on inflation. Headline inflation has slowed in the month of July, but only very slightly. The wholesale price index rose 9.22% in July after a 9.4% jump that we had seen in the month of June. The July figure is in line with the NDTV profit poll, but primary articles inflation, which has come in, has eased off a little bit. It's come in at 11.3% versus 12.22% that was seen in June. The fuel group inflation in July has come in at 12.04%. This data includes the impact of higher diesel and cooking gas costs that were announced on the 24th of June. But also I'd like to point out that the May inflation figure, the WPI inflation figure, has been revised upwards to 9.56%, up from 9.06%. Of course, there is a little bit of easing that we have seen, but despite that, there are no comments coming in from the government, not at least from Montek Singh Ahluwalia, who refused to give us a timeline for when we're likely to see inflation dropping to 4 or 5% levels.
There is a slight decline. I think, it's consistent with the view that inflation will slowly come down. I think it's still on the high side. So I feel that we need to remain vigilant on this front, but it's good that the rate is slowly coming down. Different people have made different forecasts, but 4 or 5 is quite a long way. I think, but the important thing is it is actually coming down.
Let's talk stock specific now. We learned that NTPC is no longer in talks with the Jharkhand government to revive the Patratu thermal power plant, and NTPC's loss seems to have become JSPL's gain. The state government is now in talks with JSPL to take over the plant. Sources indicate that the deal sweetener for JSPL may be that extra bit of land that they have, and also short coal supplies that they will get for increasing the capacity at the power plant. Rajkumar Sahu is getting in all this exclusive news points on the story. So why did NTPC walk out? I guess they were in negotiation with the Jharkhand government for about 6 or 7 years.
It looks like the timing is the crucial factor here, Bianca, because they have been waiting, they have been proposing, they have been submitting report to the Jharkhand government. At the same time, there are a lot of political instability in Jharkhand, the state of Jharkhand. You know, there are a lot of governments that have changed, and between this, there are a lot of things that has also changed. Remember that, you know, ex-NTPC chairman has joined JSPL. Actually, NTPC chairman R.S. Sharma, who was in NTPC, it is then when NTPC actually submitted that report for taking over the Patratu thermal power plant. After that, he joined NTPC after retiring, you know, after the cool-off period. So between this, a lot of things have changed. But at the same time, you know, because of timing, because of the ownership issues, related issues, NTPC seems to have walked out. They have on record, told NDTV that they are no more in talks with Jharkhand government, and they don't want to take over the Patratu thermal power plant, which is 840 megawatt. JSPL's, you know, commitment in Jharkhand is now finally paying dividends.
Right. Raj, thanks very much for the details on that story. Good luck to JSPL, I guess. Moving on now and talking about SKS Microfinance. That's a company which is in focus today. It's off more than 5% in today's date. Newspaper reports doing the rounds that there may be trouble brewing at the board level of India's only listed microfinance lender, SKS. Media reports have been suggesting that board members want Vikram Akula to give up the executive powers. But no, that's not true. That's what company sources tell us. Nikhil Anandar is standing by with what he's picked up from sources. Nikhil, hi. Independent Director Mr. Pramod Bhasin's resignation has perhaps added fuel to the fire, but is Mr. Akula under pressure from the board to move into a non-executive role?
Well, good afternoon, Bianca. At least that's what news reports suggest, and clearly controversy doesn't seem to want to leave SKS Microfinance. But clearly after the termination of Suresh Gurumani, now newspaper reports are suggesting that Vikram Akula, the founder of SKS Microfinance, may be under threat of losing control of the company that he founded himself in 1998. Reports say that board members essentially want Akula to give up his executive powers because they feel that he does not devote enough time to business and that he's traveling all the time. The suggestion apparently though hasn't gone out too well with Akula, who could be looking at exploring legal options if the board decides to go ahead with this decision. At least that's what the newspaper reports are suggesting. However, SKS Microfinance sources say that Akula has no intention to resign and that from his non-executive position, and that the company is trying to get the board really to issue a joint statement in support of Akula to calm these fears. But clearly no respite for SKS because this comes just days after the resignation of Pramod Bhasin as an independent director, the timing of which the company says is inconsequential and purely coincidental. But clearly the SKS Microfinance stock, which has been volatile for quite some time, now faced with yet another uncertainty, and as you said, the stock is already down 5% in trade today.
Indeed, it is. Nikhil, thanks very much for the details there in terms of what you've picked up from company sources. But for our viewers, we'd like to play out a comment coming in from Mr. Pramod Bhasin, who's resigned as independent director from the board of SKS Microfinance.
My primary purpose is, once I've stepped down as the CEO of Genpact, I'm looking to pursue a number of other business ventures. Some of them may be in the financial services area. That is my background for the last 15, 20 years. And consequently, I want to make sure there can be no conflict in the future. I just thought it's the prudent thing to do is to get off the board right now. I'm afraid there's not much more to that story.
So that's Mr. Bhasin's rationale for why he has quit from SKS Microfinance. But of course, the focus here on NDTV does keep going with SKS Microfinance to see what exactly happens at the board level in that company. A short break here on Power Lunch. On the other side, we have a special guest joining in, Mr. S. Hazara, who's the CMD with the Shipping Corporation of India. He joins in to talk a little bit more in detail about their Q1 results, the business outlook, and a lot more. Stay with us. Short break.
Power Lunch brought to you by Reliance 3G. Switch to Reliance for the fastest 3G experience.
Welcome back to Power Lunch on NDTV Profit. European markets have opened up with a sharp downtick this Tuesday afternoon. So you have the CAC 40 off 1.7% right now. The FTSE 100 off just a little under 1%. Amsterdam index is off again 1.5%. Portuguese index off 1%. Surprising because when you look at Asian markets, there was a little bit of support coming in the earlier trade, but you have, of course, Hang Seng closing off 0.5%, and the Chinese markets, that's the space where there was a little bit of a sharp downtake, so as to say. Indian markets, meanwhile, haven't really gone anywhere. We're seeing a little bit of easing of the earlier gains, and right now the Sensex and the Nifty, both of them clocking in gains of about 1/4%. Nifty has lost about 10 points since the last time we checked in on it. Nifty at 5084 and the Sensex still trading below 17,000. But let's get in a little bit of, let's shift the focus away from markets and talk about corporates right now. A special guest joining in right now, Mr. S. Hazara, who's the CMD with Shipping Corporation of India, is joining in right now. I'm going to first off welcome you, sir, to the show, and thank you very much for taking time out and talking to NDTV Profit. For our viewers, I'm going to first off read out the basic numbers that you have announced in Q1. Your sales have gone up 2.5% to 929 odd crore rupees, while you have seen a loss of 5.9 crore rupees as opposed to a profit after tax of 191 crore rupees in the same quarter a year back. But Mr. Hazara, we're seeing your company make losses for 2 straight quarters, Q1 FY12 being the second one. What went wrong in the quarter to ensure that losses have continued?
Yes, it is totally related to the global shipping industry. Just for your information as well as that of your readers, the world's largest shipping company, Mitsui U.S.K. Line, have declared a loss of more than $100 million in this corresponding quarter. NYK Line, the world's second largest, have declared also a loss of around $100 million. Hanjin has declared a loss of $250 million. Mr.
Hazara, can you talk to us a little bit about the tanker and the bulk shipping space globally, through a little outlook on that and also on the rates?
You see, I will only be able to comment on the overall global outlook. The global outlook for shipping is nothing too bright in the immediate future because the supply pressure continues unabated. The vessels are still, new vessels are still getting delivered, and as you know, there are worries in the world economy because of the pressure on US economy, the pressure in the Eurozone, and particularly Greece, Italy. Now even people are talking of France, Portugal. All these economies are somewhat, very much weak. So that will have some effect on the international trade and consequently on international shipping. China also, the growth seems to be slightly slowing down. Even in India, we have seen because of the inflationary pressure, the margins of interest are being raised, which to some extent at least is affecting our growth as well. So with all these things, I don't know, going forward, while the demand will continue to rise, but it may not really, fully cover the increased supply which is coming into the market. So going forward for at least a few quarters, situation is not likely to be very good. But talking about SCI, we are taking various measures, and we definitely look forward to tiding over this difficult phase.
Let's hope you do, sir. But what about margins? You have seen your EBITDA margins drop to 8% versus 24% year on year. Is there any indication that margins will straighten themselves out? And if they do, can you offer a timeline?
No, I will not like to at all comment on SCI specific margin, etc. going forward, because after all we are a listed company and we are not sharing anything for the future projections with stock exchange. So obviously I will not be able to make any comment about our specific future results or future projections or margin. But all that I had to say, and I have mentioned that shipping is going through a difficult phase, and I don't think before maybe well into the second half of 2012, when the delivery of ships are likely to come down very substantially, I don't think the situation for the global shipping will reverse to a great extent.
All right, Mr. Hazara, I'm going to shift focus to the liner business, which has made losses of 61 crore rupees in Q1. Generally, that's a lot higher when you compare sequentially. Why is this segment witnessing weakness, and what is the problem with the liner space?
Yeah, it's exactly the same reason as the other segments, that is oversupply. And of course, even in the liner segment, the container volumes also have not gone up as much as it could have because of the pressure on the global economy and thereby the international trade. So, reason is the same, and as you know, the bigger and bigger size vessels are coming into the market, thereby having further pressure on the container freight rates in virtually all the segments, be it between India and Europe or India and Far East, India and Mediterranean. So that is the same reason which is prevailing in the other segments as well.
Okay, so oversupply issues damping your liner business. But sir, when do you expect the liner rates to recover?
No, there is a move already to increase the rates, because every liner operator in the world, they are realizing that the present level of rates are just not sustainable. In the recent past, we have tried and we have achieved to increase the rates by about $75. We are hoping to increase the rates again by about maybe $100 to $200 in the coming couple of months. So definitely we do hope things will get better from here onwards, particularly also because we see now the bunker prices are reducing after a long time. The fuel prices are coming down, so that will have an immediate positive effect on the liner division.
Okay, Mr. Hazara, we don't get to speak to you very often, so I'm going to take this opportunity to ask you that, of course, there are indications that China may see slower growth. If there is a commodity correction, how do you see a further slowdown in freight rates in the shipping business?
I do not think so, because China, what is happening is the growth is getting slowed down. But of course, the growth is very much there in China, and I'm sure it will continue despite whatever happens in the commodity market. Overall, I think China cannot afford really to slow down their exports, because then their economy will be hit very badly. So I'm quite sure the exports from China will continue, and I'm quite sure the liner division and segment in general will continue to do better in the coming months, not worse.
Mr. Hazara, your interest expenses, I noticed, has increased a full 100% when compared to the year-ago figure. Is this because of capex increase year over year?
That's right. Absolutely, you are absolutely right. Even our depreciation have gone up by 41 crores. That is because new ships are getting delivered, and obviously once the new assets come in, your depreciation and interest is bound to increase.
Okay, let's come to orders now. Can you give us a sense of order booking in the shipping business, and if you have any target internally for the coming year?
Yeah, we have an order book of 30 ships, nearly 2 million DWT, and they will be all getting delivered between 2011, 2012 and some in 2013. So that is going on, and definitely SCI, despite the some setback in the results, SCI do believe that the future for Indian trade and Indian shipping is bright, so we'll continue to order ships.
So there's some buzz doing the rounds that you may be looking at hiving off your offshore business into a separate entity. Now, there may be just market rumors these are, but I want your comment on the veracity of this hiving off. Is that on the cards?
No, we don't want to do that. That's a totally wrong, absolutely wrong publication, and it has quoted Captain Sunil Thapar, my colleague in the Bulgaria and Tanker Division, and he tells me that he has been totally misquoted, completely out of context. In any case, he is not in charge of the offshore business, so I definitely do not expect him to talk about offshore. And if anything, we are wanting to increase our presence in the offshore segment. There is no question whatsoever of hiving off offshore business of SCI.
Mr. Hazara, thanks so very much for taking time out and speaking to NDTV Profit, a rather candid Mr. Hazara there, talking not just about their results, but also being a little candid and saying that there is not really too much hope when it comes to improving margins or the oversupply situation in the shipping business just yet. In the next 1 or 2 quarters, the stock today, SCI, is off more than 6%. I'm going to have to wrap up this edition of Power Lunch, but thanks for watching. We'll be back after this very short break with Buy or Sell.